Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm Leah Ronalder. I work at REN21 where I lead the cities work, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this event today as part of the Africa Climate Week. I'll give you a really brief overview of what REN21 has been doing on cities before turning to our experts, which I think will also be, the base of this discussion and what we're all here for. In case you don't know REN21, we are a global community of actors from science, academia, NGOs, governments, and industry with the goal of accelerating the transition to renewables and accelerate that transition now and make it happen now and really give decision makers and everybody else also the tools in order to make this happen. We published the Renewables and Cities Global Status Report in March, along with some key findings and lots of case studies with really practical examples of how the transition works on the ground and what cities have already done and what some of these efforts are that cities have undertaken in order to make this transition happening. I'd like to start with first, why do we even need cities in the energy transition? Because they're high impact areas, majority of people live in cities, with the share is going to increase with urbanization and population growth. Cities are responsible for a large share of the global final energy use. But at the same time, cities are also a big lever in order to accelerate this transition. And we globally always hear about record installations and how the energy transition is accelerating. But most of these advancements are in the power sector, where renewables are indeed strong, but we are lagging behind when it comes to renewables in heating, cooling, and in transport. And here cities can be our biggest ally, because if we look at heating and cooling, most of the demand comes from buildings, and most buildings are of course localized in and around cities. And here we have very dispersed and local markets. So local governments and cities can have an important role in shifting to renewables here. Same for transport, where renewables are lagging behind and where public transport, as well as shifting to more active modes of transport, walking and biking infrastructure, cities can have a big lever here, as well as improving the overall public infrastructure and so on. And we see that cities are taking action, and that there are a variety of drivers for renewables. On the one hand, mitigating climate change, but also clean air and a healthy environment. And I'm personally curious to see how this is going to also change with now the WHO guidelines coming out, which have pretty much slashed the levels of safe air pollution in half. Local economic development, which of course specifically in the sub-Saharan African context is a very important driver. Poverty alleviation and improved energy access, but also the ability to have a stable and secure energy supply, among other things. And we've seen, that cities are committing to renewables and net zero. There's now more than 1 billion people that live in a city with either renewable energy and or target and or policy, in addition to having cities with net zero commitments and electric vehicle targets. And we've seen city governments divesting from fossil fuels and declaring climate emergencies. So there's lots of action on the local ground when it comes to cities. Just to dive in, these are renewable energy targets where we've seen cities around the world taking commitments, also predominantly in Europe and North America, but also emerging, of course, elsewhere. Similarly, we've seen the targets, net zero targets, absolutely explode over the last, let's say, 2 years, which is, of course, a very welcome development. But I'm curious to also see what this will mean and when it comes to renewable energy in order to make these targets happen. But all of these targets, of course, also need policies and implementation. And here we've seen city governments taking the lead to scale up renewables across all of their sectors for their municipal operations, scaling up renewables for their own power supply, decarbonizing their urban transport with electric vehicles, and even thinking where they get their electricity from, expanding the charging infrastructure and expanding the overall infrastructure of the city, decarbonizing heating systems, and so on. but also to think about how they can get everybody else in this energy, and if everybody else who's operating in the city, so citizens, businesses, industries, to think about how they can become of this energy transition. So on the one hand, we've seen cities using their regulatory power, making it using mandates, making it mandatory to install solar PV, but also giving fiscal or financial incentives to support the renewable energy transition on the ground, as well as some of these what we call enabling mechanisms of low emission zones, or banning certain technologies, or just improving the overall infrastructure for renewables in cities. Of course, let's be honest, cities have done fantastic things, but there's of course also some barriers to this action, where some cities may not recognize the role that they have to play or that they can play. National governments may not consider this role. There's a lack of legislative power, access to financial resources, but also to human resources. Some of these market regulations that cities are subject to are set at higher levels of governments. And of course, the big elephant is also in the room. There continues to be big national level support for fossil fuels, which also impedes city action. And of course, if there are targets, there also need policies, then you need implementation, and then we need to track the progress to see that that we are on track to meet these targets. So just to finish off, to say that cities, renewables are an urban opportunity, and that local action can support reaching national decarbonization goals, and of course also reach global goals, and that we need to speak about these synergies and how we can empower cities and build on cities and their strength in order to make this an inclusive energy transition. And with this, I'll stop here, and we'll go to our fantastic panel and introduce them, and learn about how we can make this a transition, what renewables mean for cities in sub-Saharan Africa, and what we need in order to build on them more specifically. Joelle, I'd like to start with you. You're from Sustainable Energy Africa. Can you give us your view of how local governments can transform their cities with renewables?
Thank you, Leah. Indeed, I'm Joel Nana from Sustainable Energy Africa, a South African-based NGO, by the way. And we've been working a lot with sub-Saharan African municipalities over the past 20 years, especially in the fields of climate change energy. And I think one thing that stands out for me is the dedicated support that the cities receive. So we've actually been long enough in the game to see that it's a process that takes a long time. For it to happen, it takes several years, especially for municipalities. And we've been able to see change in municipalities that have had consistent, dedicated support over the years. It hasn't happened over 2 years or 3 years, but over several years. And the one single factor influencing that, for us, at least from our point of view, has consistently been the dedicated support, either through support agencies, either through multilateral donors, or sometimes even embedded support within the cities themselves. That will be my short answer, Leah. Thank you. On mute. Yeah.
Good point. Thank you. Many thanks, Joe, for that answer. Just as a follow-up question, could you maybe share some examples of cities in sub-Saharan Africa that have successfully accelerated renewables, some inspiring examples for our audience?
Thanks, Leah. When it comes to, well, I wouldn't really say like has successfully, because it's always a process and we know there's always more to do. But the one city that comes to mind is definitely the city of Cape Town, luckily where we are based, because the city of Cape Town has been a pioneer in providing more affordable and secure energy access throughout the years. And actually, Cape Town's long history of renewable energy efforts includes like the establishment of a dedicated energy and climate change unit, So particularly us, Sustainable Energy Africa, we've been working with the city of Cape Town since like the years 2000. We even helped them in producing their first State of Energy report in 2006, being the first city in the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa to have such a report, to have such a report to help or to feed into its initial target for renewable energy. But then the city didn't stop there. In 2013, which is actually the most remarkable step for me, when the South Africa had no national standards in place for solar PV on buildings. Cape Town went ahead and they couldn't wait on national government. They went and published their guidelines to promote the safe and legal installation of distributed renewables in commercial and residential settings. And no wonder that why in 2019, the city of Cape Town now has the highest concentration of registered rooftop solar PV nationwide. This is actually about 42 megawatt of solar rooftop PV and 0.6 megawatt on city-owned buildings. So this has been so successful that such processes like commissioning reports, having a system in place to register solar PV systems, it's been replicated in over 40 other South African municipalities through the support from the GIZ South Africa Energy Program called the SAGEN program. So through that program, Sustainable Energy Africa has been able to work with more than 40 municipalities now to replicate that kind of model from the city of Cape Town. And we're really seeing quite a lot of progress. I could have actually shown an infographic, but it shows that from 2016, when we started this work, we already have like more than 30 municipalities having approved mechanisms or processes in place. Meanwhile, it didn't exist before. And all this has contributed to really accelerating the deployment of renewable energy, mostly in the commercial settings, but now even more in the residential settings. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joel, for sharing this. What I find it an inspiring story, and how it also has, trickle down action in more municipalities. Just as a reminder to the audience, Joel knows a lot about cities in the region. So if you have any questions, feel free to put a question in the chat, and we'll get back to you later, so Joel can answer that question. Let me now turn to Vincent to provide a bit of a different perspective. Vincent from UN Habitat, to give this international perspective of what you think how local governments can transform their cities with renewables. Vincent, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Leon. Thank you, REN21, for inviting UN Habitat to this very important session. I just want to say that the importance of the transition, accelerating transition to renewable energy, I mean, it's really the way forward. If we look at how the world is moving, just 1 week ago, the General Assembly in New York has a special session on the high-level dialogue on energy, because the Secretary General of the United Nations, and together with member states, they have realized that SDG 7 was the one lagging behind. There have not been a lot of enough investment so that we can really do what we pledged to do during the summit on the Sustainable Development Goal. And then at the same time, we also look at the climate change, the summit in Paris, where we stated that the world will be net zero by 2050. So there was a big high level. And several member states came and pledged. And together, there were also some municipalities which also pledged. Most of them say that by 2030, there will be 100% renewable energy. So that they are adopting renewable energy. They are really investing heavily on it. Yes, we at UN Habitat and also at the UN, our role is to advocate. While advocating, we also provide technical assistance to local government so that we can help them to transition towards net zero carbon emission. And this is really why transitioning, we also address two major other important issues. That is poverty in one side, and that is climate change. I want to emphasize on the fact of poverty. Leah, you mentioned the importance of city. Yes, indeed. City is the culprit of climate change, but city is also the highest concentration of economic activities. And therefore, if we invest, if we accelerate the transition in cities, we are able to address both the climate change issue, the poverty, and also improving the living condition of people. Now, the question to me was, how is Habitat doing? What concretely on the ground, what have we achieved so far? I may not have a list of cities. I can, in reviewing their building code, to include energy issue, because this topic was not there before. And I really appreciate the presentation of Joel mentioning Cape Town that is championing, let's say, the race towards renewable energy in cities. I just want to remind the speaker, the participant that Cape Town in Africa that adopted, and I think 2003, 2006, has been used now by many other cities, has been inspired by many other cities to sort of set the stage on their access to energy, on their development of the policy, and also on the application. So I just want to say that it is really a good example. And in fact, also in South Africa, Jill just mentioned, most of the municipalities in South Africa are now, they have now their energy strategy, which is very important. In other sub-Saharan Africa, this is still a dream, but they use Cape Town as a reference. And on the other hand, we always say that local action, global impact. Local authority are indeed places where we really need to help them by giving them tools, by also encouraging them to put in place financial instrument, because that is the case, and also help them with technical assistance. We are seeing more and more municipalities are requesting for technical assistance on solar rooftop, on using wind energy, on even using the biogas technology, transforming their municipal waste into energy. These are requests that we receive on a daily basis, and we believe that indeed, yes, it's true. On the ground, local government are now looking for renewable energy as a solution to their problem. This was not the case 10 years ago. Back to you, Leah.
Many thanks, Vincent, for this introduction. And I really appreciate the point that you make with the opportunity for investing in cities and in the economic activity also as an opportunity to reduce poverty and improve living conditions. I think this is a very important point that we always have to keep in mind, that it's also about people. I mean, in the end, it's about improving living conditions and providing these better environments. I have one follow-up question for you. You already mentioned the importance of technical assistance for cities. What kind of other support mechanisms do you think are needed so that cities can scale up renewables faster?
Thank you very much, Claire. I think you mentioned it, the financing sector, it's really what local government needs. And they need to be assisted in developing bankable projects because the opportunity is there. I may just give you example of cities in Cameroon or in Douala, or also, Douala City, Yaoundé, even Nairobi, where when you look at the business opportunity, you realize that indeed renewable energy is cheaper, far more cheaper than fossil fuel. But these cities, most of the time, they don't have the capacity to develop bankable projects. So they may have banks there that are willing to invest on renewable energy, but they are not able to make the case for it. So this, I believe that, I know that there are already some initiatives like the GAP Fund that is being put forward by GIZ that assists municipality to develop bankable projects on renewable energy. But I will also suggest that other banks or rather international financing institutions may put in place mechanisms to help municipality in developing bankable projects on renewable energy. The fact being that renewable energy is decentralized energy, and therefore, even if it's an intermittent energy, but it's a reliable. And recently, because of the advance in the technology and also the fact that it has less monopoly compared to the centralized energy system. Therefore, I would suggest that says to some sort of to look at it seriously is the issue of policy and also local sort of bylaws. I still see, for example, Kenya made the use of solar hot water system mandatory, but they had to remove that mandatory legislation because the conditions that were in place did not allow the policy to be implemented on the ground because they don't manufacture solar system, solar hot water system. They don't have mechanism to control the quality, the standard. So this has created a lot of problem with the consumer. So in short, two points: investment, heavy investment in one part, and then on the other part, policy that are really conducive, policy that are adopted after a feasibility study. Back to you.
Many thanks, Vincent, for this statement. I think you're right. I mean, finding these bankable projects and the importance of policy cannot be highlighted enough. I'd like to next turn to a city perspective. Eleth, you're from you're from a city government. You're from the city of Kampala. What do you think is needed? Your opinion of the role of local governments and how they can transform their cities with renewables. Over to you. If you unmute yourself, that would be Thank you.
Good morning, Leah, and good morning, everyone. And thank you, Leah, for the introduction. Just to a little bit of introduction on myself. My name is Eleth Nakazi, and I work with the Kampala Capital City Authority, which is the administrative, in charge of administering the Kampala Capital City. So I work with the strategy department of the authority, and specifically, I've been focusing on the coordination of climate change initiatives across the different functions. I would say I would definitely reiterate the role of local governments, because in essence, they are the ones closest to the people. And so have that interaction enables them to drive the adoption of actions that at the central government. Of course, if you say we have a national climate change policy, but how does it disseminate and how does it appear down to the local people? And how do you encourage that adoption? So of course, actions of the local governments become very key, because they have to lead by example. So if you have local ordinances, people adopt, or you encourage that behavior that you would desire to see within the city, to also drive the action upwards and also to a national scale.
Thank you, Eleth. I think this point of, closest to the people, that's often something that we underestimate, and is a real strength of cities. So I appreciate you bringing that point to the table. Can you maybe share some insights of what Kampala has been doing, and maybe also share some advice that you would give to other cities and then other stakeholders?
Of course, I would say, since, of course, as the city, yes, it has been there. The city council has been there for quite a while, but I would say that as an authority, it's quite a new administration. So we've been trying, and ambitiously, I would say ambitiously trying to find our legs and also provide that exemplary leadership. Because at the start, when they were, let me say, rebranding the city council to establish the Kampala Capital City Authority, one of the visions that was set for the city is to transform Kampala into an attractive, a vibrant, and a sustainable city. So one of the strategies that was adopted, at least to follow up on that sustainability ambition, was the development of the Kampala Climate Change Action Plan. So it has framed a lot of actions we've taken in response to addressing the climate change challenge, and covers quite a bit of sectors, from the land use management, the energy, transport, and how we move about waste management, and the building sector. So to speak specifically to the renewables, the main sectors or key sectors that we've identified as points of entry for KCCA have been the building sector, mainly concentrating on the public schools that are under the KCCA mandate, under public lighting, then most recently in transport. So of course, I have to underline the fact that with Uganda, the wider legislative power lies with the national government. So as much as local governments may have the power to establish or put in place local ordinances, those ordinances have to be framed within the national law. So to overcome, sorry for that, to kind of, let me say, overcome that hurdle, not a hurdle necessarily, but still a hurdle in some way or another, has been providing, or most of our actions have been framed in the aspect of leading by example. So when I speak of leading by example, what am I speaking to specifically? For example, within the school sector, we have these public schools that we manage. So of course, tried to do has been to push for efficiency improvements in the energy use within the schools. But more recently, we've installed, I think there's a current project going on that will see the installation of solar roofs in 2 of the schools, which mainly cater to the PWD schools children. But in at least 11 out of the 79 schools that we managed, we've kind of installed biogas systems to supplement their cooking energy, since most of them still use biomass, but still trying to push that move towards clean cooking. And nationally, I was glad to note, as in with the last, I think the last financial year, they removed the tax on LPG. So at least that will encourage, I hope it will encourage the adoption of LPG for cooking, at least in the homes. Here, I have to clarify, like the private home energy use, that has to be driven a lot more by the central ministry than the city government, because there's some level of where your power reaches. Within the public lighting sector, we are expanding our solar network for the lights. Right now, it might be I think a 20-80 share of hydro, but also this has a caveat, because also we as a country are expanding our hydropower, the hydro power production. So of course the direction from the national government is to appear to be users of this current that we are producing. So you can't deviate too much from the other side. So I think the aim is to achieve a 50-50 share down the line. And more recently also, we've within the mobility sector, we've introduced, we are working with a local company, Zembo, to introduce electric bikes within our city fleet. So there are some the bikes which are used for, let me say, the normal city activity monitoring down in the parishes and the village and the wards or cells. The hope is to have these inspectors using these electric bikes. And at a national scale, there's a company that is manufacturing, I think, solar powered buses. Right now, of course, as KCC, our mandate hasn't yet moved to managing public transport, but we are also working with the public transport operators to kind of try to let me say, to organize the industry. So down the line, I see also that coming into play.
Many thanks, Elith, for sharing these perspectives. You know, what you as a city government have been able to do, but also highlighting this importance that national governments have a role to play in how our cities are being shaped. This is also a point I'd like to come back later and have all of our panel's perspectives on this importance of working together. But first, let me turn to you, Martin Baltes. I'm really happy to have you here and share some of your perspectives of, you know, you've been involved in the ComSSA as well, and sharing some of these perspectives and learnings that you have experienced there. Over to you.
Leah, for having me on this panel. And thanks also for the other panelists, for Elad, Vincent, and Joel for your contribution. I'm speaking on behalf of GIZ support to the Covenant of Mayors Sub-Saharan Africa. The Covenant is the Covenant of Mayors Sub-Saharan Africa, I have to say, is mainly supported by the European Commission, and also by the Spanish Corporation and by the German government. And so we're implementing all across the continent. We have, I think, some 200 signatory cities. And Kampala is one of them, I think. So happy to meet with someone from Kampala today, Elad. We're, as GIZ, we're implementing in Cameroon, Burkina, in Nigeria, and Kenya for the time being. So we're hoping, of course, that this joint effort we're having will find its way into the next funding phase by the EU, and that we then can extend, because there's still many signatory cities actually demanding support from us. What do? We work, I think this is the important point. I mean, cities are key, I think, when it comes to mitigation and adaptation. Cities consume 80% of the energy, they produce 60% of the greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. And then when we look at the continent, we have a reverse scenario almost. We only have 3% of contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, and we have lack of access to energy. So it's always, you know, I can say there's a threat. A threat can always be a chance, and if you're lacking energy, and then maybe the chance is in leapfrogging, which was like a buzzword 10 years ago, but it's easier said than done. So what we're doing, we're engaging with the signatory cities in sitting down and trying to understand what the infrastructure situation in the particular city is today, and what the actions are that they are already taken, and see how we can accommodate these, let's say, the needs they already have in the future, because the future means growing citizenship and added vulnerability due to the negative effects of climate change. So we do work in the field of adaptation, but we also work in the field of mitigation, and that's what it's about today. And sometimes both ends also meet. You know, if I have deployed more renewable energy, also I think you know, as Vincent said, I think they are decentral, so they're more resilient many times. So we also do something on the adaptation scene. So we do work with the cities on elaborating strategic documents that then can give them orientation in deploying renewable energies and taking the important measures on the adaptation side. We then also try our best out of these strategic documents, identify concrete infrastructure projects that we then assess technically and economically. I come back to the economical part because I think that's very important. We also enhance the network, so we engage in these exchanges. And Ilet, I mean, that's exactly what he was saying. Whatever you do is a good example for other cities, and cities believe more in what peer cities are doing than what the scientists are telling them. So reality always beats theory, I think. So, but coming back to the what is most needed is that all the strategic paperwork becomes a reality. So really developing renewable energies, and I think it's been said in here, what does it need? What are the main obstacles that we're facing? So one is, it's been pointed out already, so the local governments often do not have the mandate for infrastructure, or do not have the sole mandate for infrastructure. So we do have to do a lot of liaison work together with the local governments, with the intermediate levels, with the national utilities, and with the national government. And this is not only on the policy level, this is really on the developing level of concrete projects. When it comes to funding, it's a bit the same situation. There's more and more subnational potential funding available, but there is usually not the mandate on the receiving end in making this funding available. So there is still decentralization, devolution. Though these are the key, I think, the key factors to enable cities to do more on the side of adaptation and mitigation. Especially on the continent, it will be, since cities will double or triple in size, and most people will be living in cities by 2050. I think it's always it's also becoming a question actually of mitigation. So when we develop, and it's not only, I think, it's not only about the availability of funding. It's also about what is sustainability? What does sustainability mean? I think we have to really think what is broadening the base of income for the cities? How can cities develop an infrastructure and the services that their citizens need, but that their citizens can also afford? What is infrastructure that will not burden the city or the national government with additional debt structure that they will never be able to repay, because this will only add up to more dependency. And this is why we really carefully look into the possible infrastructure development. We always look at the underlying economic dynamics. So fortunately in solar PV and then energy efficiency, even for a longer time, we have in many countries, we have a straightforward base case that is producing positive cash flows. And this is then what we bank on. We try to develop these activities, try to rope in to maximum possibility the local the local economy, the developers, the installers, if they're needed. I mean, many of them are really good, so they don't need anything from us. It's basically just a structure and maybe the potential study that we can put on the ground. But if they need, of course, then we are here also to support with trainings and other support into that direction. But I think what I really want to stress is sustainable infrastructure development means services that people can afford and not overburden with additional debt, neither the city nor the national government. So I think this is where we are trying to do the best we can. And teaming up with REN 21, I just wanted to say, so we were happy to co-finance the study on this renewable energies in Cities 21 Global Status Report. Yeah, and I think it's a good base that we can work with.
Many thanks, Martin. And yeah, this wouldn't have been possible without our financing, and we're very grateful for this. I mean, this is the reason why we can do events like this and bring people together. So I very, very much appreciate this. I would like to ask you one follow-up question. You mentioned briefly the importance of peer-to-peer learning and city government and city networks, but would you be able to elaborate a bit more of where you see the role of city networks are to also accelerate the shift to renewables and in general tackle these climate and energy questions?
Yes, I can try. I think maybe Elat is in a better position because she is from a city, but I'm only from the city network. So
I'll turn to her afterwards.
Yeah, great. Thanks. But I think the Covenant of Mayors, being the world's largest city network on climate action, the advantage here is that it's sort of mirroring what's been going on for the last 10, 15 years on the NDC level, on the national level. So that cities decide in dialogue formats with all the stakeholders on what their engagement can be, so what their contribution on the city level can be. And what we then also do is we try to liaise not only for the developing, we liaise with the intermediate government levels and the national level, but also on the strategic document, on the CCAP development, on the city. We try to align this with the NDCs and the other way around, whatever's been there first. So we always respect the principle of subsidiarity. So whatever's been there and it will be put in place first, and then we follow it up. I think city building from the bottom up to the top, something I really like, because usually it's more concrete, it's more to the people. It's like Elad said, that cities have the big advantage that they are close to everybody, and no matter what the government decides, no matter what projects you will do, it will always have a spatial authority dimension. So at one point you will be landing in a municipality, and so the municipality is I think it's a very important driver, be it rural or be it urban.
Many thanks, Martin and Elif. I mean, Martin already played the ball over to you. Is there anything you'd like to complement from your perspective?
So I think still I would say the value in the peer networks is that environment that cities have to learn from each other, because the challenges across the board are the same. How we approach them may be different. So one city can do this, the other can do that, but still there's always an opportunity for learning between the cities.
Thanks, Elif. Anybody, I'm going to open up the floor. So Joel, Vincent, is there anything from your perspectives you'd like to complement here? Because Vincent, I just saw that you also submitted something through the chat, so please feel free to also speak up here if you'd like.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you, co-panelists. I just wanted to say that what brings us together, I mean, after listening to Joel, Martin, and Elia, is that we really need to plan for energy. We need to have in place a planning tool. Of course, the COMECC, the Covenant of Mayor in Sub-Saharan Africa, one of their major tools is the SIACAP, the Sustainable Energy Access and Climate Action Plan, which these days are not being really taking it, I will not say seriously, but it's really a starting point. You need to have a tool. And that tool, it's really what would ensure sustainability. Personally, I'm not afraid of the debt. If we have seen the debt in the past, that was due to the fact that a financial investment company will just bring in and then pour money without any planning. And then country will have to pay back the wrong investment that was put in place. But if there is a clear action plan, for example, today we are happy to talk about the example of Kampala, is because they have an energy and climate action plan that was developed some time back, and the Kampala municipality is just implementing something that was already well developed in place. And this is also what we saw the case of Cape Town. So I would really encourage other local government to start with a planning tool before engaging into adopting renewable energy, because there is no need to put wind turbine where you don't have wind. There is no need to also heavily invest on solar energy when maybe your solar energy potential is not really there. Maybe you can invest on something else. So I just wanted to re-emphasize the importance of making sure that all the signatory and even those who are planning to sign for the Covenant of Mayor, they really need to have in place a tool, because that tool helps you to develop a baseline, and then after that to identify also the potential. That is the only thing I can say, because I think starting from there, we ensure not only the sustainability, but we also address the real need of people on the ground. Back to you, Leah.
Thank you, Vincent. Martin, please go ahead.
Thanks. I just try to get the hand away again. Okay, let me keep that. I'll bother with this later. The question here is, I think Vincent has a good point, but it can only be a starting point. The problem with renewable energy is that, for instance, if you take the example of a school, you will have at the end, you will have a sized PV system on the roof, and you will have a diverging use of the electricity in the school. For instance, let's say the school is only operating 6 days a week, right? So on the 7th day, what do you do with this electricity? If you can put it into the grid, it's good. If you can't, well, then it's a regulatory issue. If you can't put it in the grid, then it's another regulatory issue if the school or the school body operating can actually get money for it. But if you don't, so you actually have only 6 out of 7 days where you actually make use of this electricity. And then during the day, it's the same situation. So this is the good thing about fossil fuel, because it's adapted to the use. So you just turn it on when you need it. And this is something in energy you cannot do unless you have storage units, and storage units, as you all know, need rare earth. There's it's not so clean also, and then also it's a question of money, right, with storage units. So what I'm saying is you need the general planning, but then you really have to look at what is the potential, the spatial potential, for instance, on the roof of a school, but also what is the use that you can make. And then you have to crunch the numbers, and then you can actually see whether the renewables are actually creating a positive, or let's say a net zero cash flow, or why not. So this is always, it's a bit tricky, and you really have to go to the micro level in order to take the decision.
Thank you, Martin. I have, we have one question in the chat that I'd like to bring back to the speakers, saying all speakers have spoken about the need to act locally and the importance to develop energy and climate action plans. And what are some of the guides and advice that you would give cities or local governments who would like to start this, but are wondering where and how to get started? I mean, a question open to anybody. I mean, Elith, you've already, maybe you'd like to start here, coming from a peer, as we've said beforehand.
Oh yeah, thank you. One of also the points I was looking through my notes, one of the points I had missed during my submission was on that bit of advice to cities. Actually, for our, I would draw from our case, it's been an effort as in recognition of our legislative powers, how far they can go. It has been a case of building that body of evidence that you can take to, that can support your advocacy with the national government to enable them to put in place the enabling policy environment. Fortunately, right now, most of our policies are undergoing a revision to reflect the current challenges, especially on the issue of climate change. Then another piece of advice I would give, as in there is strength in numbers. So the networks like COMSA offer something to the cities, because right now I think the current phase of COMSA, they are supporting more cities than they actually did support in the first phase to develop their action plans. Then I would also say working with the local civil society communities, because we have enough within the city or within the country, you find there are enough, like there are a number of advocacy groups that are addressing climate change. And also the academia to start, as in kind of trying to leverage that local network and knowledge base that's resident within the city, I would say.
Many thanks, Elif. Is there, we're coming to the end, but I'd like to give, if anybody else would like to complement this, this perspective.
Maybe I can jump in, Leah?
Absolutely, Joel.
To add to the list, I think you will definitely need a team. With all the cities we've worked with, I think it's very essential to, at the beginning at least, like one of the very first steps, to have a team that's really going to work on it. And ideally, to have a team put in place even after the process, because we've seen that in successful stories like Cape Town, where today and in all other municipalities, they actually have now a team handling exclusively energy and climate change matters. So definitely, I think you will need a team. You need that dedicated unit that deals with these kind of issues.
Thank you, Joel.
Can I just add something from my experience? I think the CCAP, which is the strategic document, it has to be really aligned with the action that follows, right? And in order to be really a strategic document that gives orientation for the local government on renewable energy, on climate action, you need exactly what Elad was saying. You need to have a dialogue, iterative approach with all the stakeholders, with the informal sector, with marginalized groups, with the city administration, with everybody developing actually what the needs are and defining where the priorities are. So if you have that, I think the CCAP can give you orientation, and there has to be really just only the starting point for the developing of resilient infrastructure. And therefore, you actually have to have everybody, as Joel said, the team at the beginning. And we actually teamed up with African Center for Cities at UCT in Cape Town, and we're organizing maker workshops right at the beginning, so that we make sure that there is this continuous dynamic in the whole process. Thanks.
Many thanks, Martin. Vincent, is there anything from your end you'd like to complement to this question?
Yes, I just want to commend the speaker for emphasizing on the importance of the team at the local government, which I may not just call it a team, but a department that is specialized on energy. We all agree that energy is a driver of economic development. Energy is what you need to pump water and send in the city. Energy is what you really need for all basic services. And unfortunately, many local governments are still without an energy focal point. This is really one of the elements that need to be put in place. Even when we are talking about urban planning, we need also to sort of look into the energy implication of that urban plan, because a poor planning will end up consuming more energy than anything else. And also a poor planning will also basically will not allow the cities to really benefit from it. So it is important to create an energy office at any local government, and from there move gradually to the rest. Anyway, thank you again. Thank you all colleagues for this wonderful session, discussion. I really enjoy it. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Vincent, and thank you all. And now I have the impossible task of trying to wrap up this rich discussion. Maybe, what I've taken from here is that city governments are closest to the people, and this is definitely a strength that they can build on. that there is an economic opportunity also for cities, and that in cities most of the economic activity is based. So it's also an opportunity for poverty reduction and building these attractive and vibrant cities, as Elif has called it. Cities can lead by example, and that renewables are not only reliable and are a reliable energy supply, but also can contribute to resilience, to resilience at the local ground. There is an importance to plan, to start planning, but then also to not only plan, but get action going and start implementation. And here the importance is learning from each other, this peer-to-peer exchange, but also working in a team and having dedicated people with the knowledge who can make this happen. So thank you to everybody here. Thank you, Joel, Elif, Martin, and Vincent for joining this very rich discussion here today. And yeah, I'm looking forward to further collaboration in the future to make this action happening.